Welcome to the Charity Changemakers Podcast, the show where we dive into the journeys, challenges and successes of the leaders shaping the sector today. Each episode I'll be sitting down with the senior charity leaders to hear their stories, uncover their insights and explore what it really takes to drive change today. And if you enjoy the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like and share to help us reach as many people as possible and showcase the incredible charities that are coming on the show. So whether you're a charity professional, a trustee, thinking about joining the sector or making that next step in your career, or just passionate about making an impact, then this podcast is for you. Let's get started. Today I'm joined by Rhonda Nicklin, who's the Chief Executive of Swing and Smiles. And Rhonda's got a really fascinating career journey. She's been the Chief Executive there for the last 2.5 years, but it's her first role within the charity sector. She'd been on a bit of a pathway of training and learning, thinking that she was going to become a teacher, having been a nurse within the NHS for many years and from the start of her career. And probably when she started that career, thought she'd be a nurse for life. So a really fascinating journey, not least because of that career journey, but because she's ended up the chief executive of an organisation where her and her family have been service users for many, many years. And her daughter continues to be a user of the service. So there was a real insight that she could bring to being the chief executive of this organisation, having used their services for many years. It's a really fascinating story. It's a great time and conversation that we share together, and lots to look out for, lots of takeaways, lots of things to learn. And Rhonda brings a real passion for the cause, for the charity, for the organisation, of course, but a real commitment to training and empowerment that you're going to love hearing about as we journey through this conversation. But look, that's enough from me. Let's get on and meet our changemaker. Rhonda, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the Charity Changemakers podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No, that's great. And look, I can never give the introductions the justice that they deserve. So do you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself, who you are and what you do?
Okay, so yes, I work for Swings and Smiles. It's a charity that supports young people with disability to play. We support the whole family, so it doesn't matter what the disability is or the SEND need. You don't even need a diagnosis, you just need to be on the pathway to a diagnosis. And we give opportunities for play. We've got a brilliant centre, but also out in the community. And we support parents, we support siblings, and we just find lots of ways for young people to come together, to socialise, to experience a little bit of life's normality. And and we do this from 0 to 19. So we ensure that the experience as young people go through their life is diverse, and they have opportunities for adventure and fun and play.
Yeah, brilliant. And we're going to hear more about charity, obviously, as we move through the podcast and obviously your route into the charity sector. We like to start these podcasts off with a few quick fire questions, the opportunity for the listener to get to know you a little bit. And and we've got some great questions that have been shared with us, voted for by listeners of Series 1 that have put these questions in for this series. So the first question is, what are you listening to or reading at the moment?
So I've really got back into reading over the last couple of years. I lost it for a little bit during lockdown. It was quite hard. But I have a couple of books. I've always got a couple of books on the go. And so the one that I'm reading at bedtime as I go into sleep is a book called The Secret of Flowers by Sally Page. And that's looking at the life of a woman through bereavement and her experience of working with flowers and the stories of flowers. It's a really beautiful book. Yeah. But then alongside that, always I'm looking at kind of like self-development and growth. And I think that one of the things I'm really conscious of as a chief exec is life is busy, and how do we bring things down and calm things down in our head. And I'm reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I'm finding extraordinary and really challenging in how I calm my brain and my thinking.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I suspect we may well touch a little bit on that in the conversation. So, second quick fire question for you: what quality did you have as a child that you still now have as an adult?
Okay, so this one was really obvious really quickly, but the language has changed a little bit. So I am naturally a curious person. I am curious about everything. Now, when I was a child, I was called nosy. So I was a nosy child. I was interested in things. I never gossiped about things, but I wanted to understand what people were talking about. I was interested in listening and exploring. But yes, I think nosy sounds quite negative, when actually curious is a really important skill in life. And
Yeah.
I think, I'm very curious.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. That's really, really helpful. And the final quick fire question for you, Rhonda, is if you had a completely free day, how are you spending it?
Well, actually, I thought about this really hard. And I think naturally you'd say, okay, then I'd like a quiet day. But what I've realised recently is being with people, being with people I love is really important. So at the weekend, I had a day with my children, my older children. It's close to my birthday, and they took me out for the day, and we explored a city and had nice food and laughed all day, and being with good friends. Yeah, having that moment just to relax with people and just be yourself. I find
Yes.
that that's a lovely way to spend a day.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. No, that's great. And that importance of connection, like you say, with family and friends
Yeah,
and loved ones outside of a work environment
yeah.
and working
Just that
spaces. Yeah,
actually just being yourself and just relaxing into that space. And
yeah,
they know all your foibles, they know all your, all the things that irritate them, but they accept you anyway. So that's
sure.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great. I think that's really, really helpful. Thank you for sharing that great insights into you in a little bit, giving us a flavour of yourself. So this is always a big question, and you could probably fill the whole podcast by answering this one question when we ask it. But how did you find yourself, or what was the route for you into the charity sector? Because you've got quite a unique pathway, I'd say.
Well, I think I never intended to go into the charity sector, and I think that's probably the starting point. Uh, I have a background as a nurse. I was a nurse for many years, a senior sister in intensive care. In fact, there's photographs of me as a child wearing a nurse's uniform. That was always where I was going to go.
Always the
That was
plan.
always, that was always very clear. But life takes you on a journey, and I have a daughter with complex needs, and I moved out of intensive care. I moved into working in a girls' independent school. I managed the medical centre there,
Yeah.
and I learned lots on that journey. Communication skills, relationship skills, working with people when they're at their, at most difficult, all the way through those experiences. And then with Katie being so poorly initially, and then through the complexity of her disability, I found Swings and Smiles, and I've been a user of the charity since 2014.
Yeah.
Across that time, I was trying to find a new path for my own career, trying to balance it against 4 children and a child with complex needs and a husband who's in a very busy job. I went back into education, and I studied history and politics. And at some point, I think, I was coaching and mentoring. I'm trained in coaching and mentoring. At some point, I thought I was going to go into education, and that's kind of where I was going to go. And I started teacher training, and my daughter's needs just became more and more, and that was just so hard to balance against the strict timelines of a timetable. And so I stepped away and I spent a little bit of time kind of reflecting on my skills and where I was going to go. And then the chief exec at Swings and Smiles, she'd been here from the beginning. Been here about 8 years and done a fantastic job. And she was moving on, and they advertised and they didn't get the right person the first time. And then we're really lucky at Swings and Smiles. We've got a fantastic trustee team, really skilled, diverse skills. And one of the trustees approached me and said, have you thought about applying for this job? You have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have the passion. Is this something you'd be interested in?
Yeah.
And
And
initially,
what was your? I'll be interested. What was your reaction? Did you fall off your chair? What were? Yeah.
my first reaction was, I don't even, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I went away and said to my husband, I've been asked this question today. And I think that's a brilliant idea. That absolutely suits you. That suits your skill set. So I kind of poured over the job description and tried to work out where I definitely had the skills and where I knew that I was lacking. And then spent a bit of time, okay, then if I'm lacking in that area, how do I make that difference? And so even in that period of time while I was thinking about applying, I was starting to do some short courses, try to understand what the language meant. And I do have a brother who's a chief exec of a charity in Sheffield, the Archers Project. And I sat down with him and he said, you're reading this as meaning this, and I read this as meaning that, and you have that set of skills. I have a lot of experience of relationship building. I have a lot of unique skills. If you're looking at fundraising and marketing, that's what that comes down to. How do you sell this stuff through relationships? So yes, so I thought, well, actually, I think I could do that. So I gave it a go, and there were definitely candidates with more experience than me, but I do think that my passion and my skill set did come through, and in the end,
Yes.
it was my job.
Yeah, and quite often, we're often speaking to clients to say, look, actually half your battle when it comes to recruitment, particularly in this sector, is about that passion for the cause, and clearly an understanding of the cause and beneficiaries from yourself, from obviously being a service user, obviously with your daughter being part of the service.
And I think I said to you, right at the beginning, I'm a curious person. So we haven't gone on this journey with Katie, my daughter, who without learning so much. I've done we've explored so many different options around Katie, and another part of it is that in the work that we've done with professionals around Katie, we have worked on building relationships so that we can ask good questions and we can explore. So when I'm working with families who are wanting that support and knowledge, they know I've done that. They know I've walked that route. They know that, I bring a lot of knowledge alongside that as well as, the skills that I have from my previous career.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And those skills from a previous career, I guess it's easy to look back on the nursing, from like an outsider's perspective and go, well, there's a great medical knowledge there, which clearly I'm sure is helpful in the day-to-day working. But I can imagine that as a senior sister, you're sort of managing a lot of expectations of patients, families, carers, right through to senior consultants as well. And I guess I'm forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't know a great deal about nursing, but you're juggling a lot of expectations of different people in that type
absolutely. We were, and so I worked in a cardiac intensive care. So we, some of that was surgery that was quite quick and throughput, but also really very sick, complex cases. We were a world specialist in some of the work that we did. So, you have the expectations of surgeons who are hoping to do surgery that day, and you've got patients who aren't moving out of intensive care. So you're managing their expectations to the fact that surgery isn't going to happen in the way that they want. And they can be quite forceful and quite dominating, and you're trying to handle that in a non-conflict way. But also, you go to the wards and talk to patients, say, I'm really sorry, the surgery that you've been preparing for the last 6 months isn't happening today. And I can't give you a date when it is going to be happening. You sit with families who have just had the most fantastic experience that there's partners, parents has come through surgery and they're looking amazing and they've had a really successful experience and their life's about to change on the back of that. But you're also working with people who, surgery hasn't gone well, and either they're picked up complications that you've got to unpick and explain, or somebody's died and you've got to go through that bereavement process. So yes, there was lots of that, and you are juggling staffing and making sure you've got the right staffing in the right place, not only numbers but skills, so you've got your most experienced staff working with your most sick patients. And this was all, one of the really wonderful things about that experience is the fact that we were a very cohesive team of nurses and doctors who worked well together and had each other's back when it was tricky. So, if in all of that you'd made a mistake or there was an error, as long as you were honest about it, then as a team we supported each other. And I think that's one of the things that I've really been able to bring into the charity, is the fact that mistakes happen, and mistakes are good because you learn from mistakes. You don't learn from getting things right. So encouraging the team to be honest and open about where things have not quite gone well, so that we can have a really learning culture, has been an important part of that.
Yeah. And do you think the organisation, has responded well to someone coming in with, what probably is quite a different background to I guess a usual appointment of a chief exec, or maybe what people, I guess, within the organisation were expecting in their next chief executive?
Yes, well, overnight I went from being the mum who handed my daughter over at the door for Respite or was in play sessions and they were working alongside me, to being the person. But that was going to make the final decisions on things. But I think in all of that, I'd worked hard on the relationships within the charity. So, I think I had respect from the staff as somebody who absolutely put my daughter, front and centre of the work that we were doing. And, we've worked hard to give Katie every opportunity. And I think that brought a level of respect from the team in how I've approach that. But also, you know, when we sat down and talked about my experience, and they understood exactly what my passion and what my vision was for the charity. When I came out of the interview, this staff team actually were part of the decision making, and they went into the trustees and said, yes, we vote for her.
Yes.
So I think, you know, they felt that they'd had an opportunity to voice their opinion and weren't concerned that I was going to come in as a mum just trying to get it right for my child. But actually, I had a real vision for where we should be going and what we should be doing.
Yeah. And how do you think, having been a service user and understanding and, you know, knowing the service from that side,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of another chief executive that I've spoken to that has been in that type of scenario. Yeah. How do you think that sort of impacted that transition, that that coming into the organisation, the insight that you bring in a really different perspective to what anybody else could have brought to the role?
You know, part of that is that it is totally lived. So you know, when you have a parent who you're looking in the eye and they say, I am so tired, I am so exhausted, I don't know what to do now. I'm at a point I don't quite know what to do. You know that this isn't words. You know, you're not looking at somebody who's just using language to, you know, you absolutely get that lived experience. And I think the team already were very much of, you know, we cancel nothing. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, if we've got sessions going on and we're short of staff, then we'll do everything we can to keep those going. We'll bring staff out of the offices to make sessions work, you know. And so I think that priority, that the child is at the front and centre of everything. And I think the other thing that, as a perspective, I brought in was that if we are going to do something, we have to be the very best place to do that. Yeah. I don't want to think that people are bringing their child here to play and we're not giving them 100%. I said, you know, this element of play, it's not just optional. We're doing it because they can't do it anywhere else. It's not like, you know, families going to a soft play now that they've had a good time or a bad time and they might go again. If this isn't good, then families won't come to us again. And then they lose all that opportunity for play. So this is, you know, play is fun, but we do it as from the adult side of it, we do it in a really serious way. It has to work because we don't want parents to have that experience of not having an opportunity to go anywhere.
Yeah. And talk to us a little bit about the charity, about the organisation, or I guess you could tell us what difference Swing and Smile has made. Obviously, I guess in your life and in your family's life
well, you know, I you know, from both points of view, as a charity, we are creating opportunities for families to play, and very often you've got a child who doesn't know how to play. And hasn't got the natural skills to learn that by watching children around them, you know, either visual impairment, hearing impairment, you know, or, you know, autism, all of those kind of things. They are not naturally learning from other people. So supporting that play for families and bringing, you know, young people as a family group to play together is really important. And that was important for me. You know, I'd come here and say, I don't know how to even begin to get Katie to play with this kind of equipment. What do I do? And how do I include Will? Because Will's her closest sibling. How do I include Will in all of this? So, you know, that is so impactful. Things where, you know, a child who might be nonverbal and visually impaired and have challenging behaviour, and then you want to, you know, a sibling to come along and play and be part of that. You know, it's really hard work. And having families, you know, tell us that, you know, they've never seen their children play together before. And I definitely experienced that. You know, that was part of our journey. But the other thing is, if you have a child with need, then they get a lot of attention. And so siblings can feel on the edge of what's going on. You know, very recently we had a mum say that at home they'd been playing and her daughter had tried to put her hands around her brother's neck, and he was like, I don't want to live here anymore. You know, and so coming out to somewhere like Swings and Smiles can completely change that mood. It changes the day. You know, they can come and play. It's, you know, they can have that experience. They can have time together. They can have time apart. But through our Civ Support program, we can listen to siblings and say, you know, what you're experiencing, you're not alone. You know, other children are experiencing this. Yeah. But as much as we've got the centre here, when we play here, we go into schools and we work with schools to support young people who might be having difficulties concentrating in the classroom through sensory play. We go into schools to support siblings. We have a programme with Reading Football Club where we have a sensory space there so the whole family can go and do those activities together. It's a really diverse programme that we offer in just giving people the opportunity to be together and do nice things.
Yeah. And for the organisation today, off the back of global pandemic, cost of living crisis, funding cuts that we're seeing across organisations, across sectors, across the whole landscape. What does today look like for Swing and Smiles and the growth that's been over the last few years, and I guess going into the future in the coming years? What does that look like?
I think, I don't think anybody would be surprised if I was to say that in the SEND community we've got enormous need, and our numbers are growing all the time, and how we meet that need is really interesting. We are always looking, because we're still relatively small. We've supported 1,500 families over the last 10 years, and wow. that is growing. But we're still relatively small, so we're very responsive to need. Families say, this is what we want, then we'll do the research around that and see how that might impact the families as well and take ourselves on that journey. But I think, one of the things that we're really working on is, Kevin Brown's message of being fundable and findable. So, we know through the work we do and the impact data that we have, that the need is there and that we can show the impact that we're having. So when we apply for grants, we're relatively successful in that. Even in this market, it's hard work, but we're successful. But one of the things that we've really been working very hard on is really engaging with our community. And so from that point of view, we've been working on being seen, being findable. And we've got some quite big local organisations who are coming alongside us across this next year to help us with our funding. So, it's a challenge, but it's not insurmountable. And we are being seen for the work we do now, with greater diversity across our community. And I think, when we're out and about, people will say, oh, we know about Swings and Smiles, we know what we do. So, and we have a big impact on this local community. So most people would say, I know somebody who has used the charity.
Yes, yeah. And has that been a mindset shift over the last few years? Because, like you say, you've absolutely got a fundable service. We've heard that, directly from you, from, clearly as chief exec, but also as, the benefit that the service has brought to you. It's been that mindset shift to become more findable in the local area.
I think so. And I think, it's trying to, when you have limited resources and you are working out where that money should go, obviously, your focus is on families, but actually working out how you market yourself and how much money you put across to marketing, and whether you try to keep marketing in-house and upskill your team, or whether you take marketing outside of the charity and use people who are already skilled at that. They've been the big discussions that we've been having across the last year, and we have put some money towards that, but the return on that has been so significant that's definitely been the right thing to do. So yes, it is a culture change in spending some money on marketing, but like I say, the impact has been really significant. So and the stories our families tell, we'll go to an organisation that's decided to make us their charity partner, and they'll say, we've come to you because your families talk about you. Your families are your biggest ambassadors. So we are it has been a mindset change, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And thinking about the transition, obviously for you from that change of careers, and it's really interesting you talk about I thought maybe I was on this path towards teaching, or going down that route, and clearly you were education qualifications, so there was work that you were doing in that area. How have you found that transition from the career that you had and the mentoring and the coaching, obviously, that you were doing as well, into a chief executive position of a local charity? What have been some of the challenges, and how have you overcome them in the last? Well, how long have you been in post now?
2.5 years.
Yes, yeah. So what's that look like?
I think the first year was really challenging, and at the end of the first year, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I love it. I know that we can really make a change, but this is so different, and trying to work out where your priorities should always be, which plates you should be spinning, where your focus should be. That was a really challenge. But like I say, I've got a really good trustee team who came alongside it and supported. But I would really say that in this last year, where my skill set, as I can really see it's coming through, is in that development of the team, encouraging them to be more autonomous in their decision making, taking them forward. I'm such a believer in education and training, and just about everybody in the team has a skill through training or education across that period of time. And so really, it's making sure that as an organisation, you have skilled people doing the right job. As much as the chief exec is there at the end of the day, it's much harder work if you're not empowering your team to work. So I think, although, yes, it is a different skill set, and there have been moments that have been really challenging, particularly, when you sit in and thinking, oh my good night, we are going to be in the red at the end of the year. And this year we are just in the red. But we have good reserves, and we have really good plans for this next year coming. Those moments are tough when you don't have a business background in that kind of way, but seeing a way through it. But just making sure you've got the right people doing the right jobs, and that's been the really key. I think that's been the thing that I've been able to bring to the charity, is really upskilling the people around me.
And I guess in that transition, because we'll have people that are listening to this that are working in different sectors that are wanting to make that move in. I just wonder how you felt through that, I guess, application and interview process. I mean, I guess in the initial stage, you're very much empowered. You've already shared, your approach to empowering your team. Obviously, clearly, you were empowered by that, by trustee, by your brother, by your husband. All gave encouraging words to say, yeah, absolutely, we can see how this works. But when it came to application and interview process, how were you able to really demonstrate those transferable skills, or did it? And was there a sense of having to work a little bit harder? I don't know, through that process than maybe others might.
No, I think I did. I think I did have to work a bit harder, but I focused on the areas that were my weaker areas, and I put the strategies together. So when I sat down with the trustees at interview, I had a full strategy as to how I was going to fundraise across the first year. Now, I'd never had a fundraising strategy before, but I went and did some training, and I looked at it and I realized that I needed some areas that were, if you're looking at crowd fundraising, you've got to have different streams of, small grants and bigger grants. And I just did the work. I just did the research around that. I looked at the marketing and realized this was about relationship building and that kind of work. So rather than trying to make my skills shoehorn and say, I can do all of this, I held my hand up and said, in this area, this is not my strength, but this is what I have learned in the period of time I've been looking at this. This is how I'm going to take that forward. And in the next 2 to 3 years, this will be my strength. Yeah. So, it's kind of, you've got to be honest about where your skills are. You've got to be honest about where you've got to do the learning. And I think if you've got enough skills to offset that, and they can see that, you've got the passion to do it. Yeah. And if you've got the right team around you, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about being authentic, isn't it, through that process?
Yeah. But also I think there's an element of confidence. I think, and I'm not talking about in your face arrogance, I'm talking about actually when people are looking at you and you're saying, I don't have all of these skills, but I will have these skills. Yeah. There's got to be authenticity, but there's also got to be believable confidence in that. Yes. That actually, and as I said to you, this curiosity thing, I just demonstrated that I'd done a degree and I'd been working on my own self-development right across that period of time while having a daughter with complex needs and a family and working part-time as a coach and mentor. So they could see that I was committed and I would put in the work, that I, really strongly, I will work. Yes. And I think, there's lots of things you can demonstrate, and through your CV, you can demonstrate those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was going to be one of my questions about where the history degree was going to come in, but or that sense of, how's it going to help? But there is, like you say, was that demonstration that there was a real commitment to the path that you thought you were going, and clearly there was a different path that opening up for you.
And I think one of the things about history, and if you're trying to demonstrate particular skills, is history is a researching degree. So if you're saying actually, we need to do some work in this area, I want to strengthen the play program, I want to strengthen these areas, then research is required in all those areas, and using those skills not only to research fundraising and how you're going to do that, but how we improve the service, how we use our impact data, how we take those things forward. You can always make those things work if if that's your mindset, if that's what you're doing that for.
Yeah. Over the last sort of 2.5 years that you've been in post, and obviously in this new position, where do you think you've got your support from, or things that have helped you to grow in your role? Whether that come from individuals, you talk a little bit about training, educate. Has there been continued CPD, the different things that you've sort of tapped into?
Absolutely. So in those areas where I knew that I was weak, have obviously done some CPD and training around that. The trustee group here is phenomenal, and so we've got such a diverse range of skills across the trustees, and I reach out to them individually as I need to. My family are incredible, but I would, and my husband from the beginning came on the journey, has been completely supportive. But I would say that some of the support has really come from the team, because the team has liked my approach. They've felt empowered. They've felt encouraged to grow in their own work. So they know that they can challenge me. They know that they can come back and say, you told me to go and do the reading. I've done the reading and I don't agree with you on where we're going with this. And they know they can do that. And we'll sit down and go, okay, then let's talk this through. And at the end of it, I might be right, and they might go back and say, okay, then I can see where you're coming from. I've been doing the wrong bit of reading. I need to look around that and go back and look at that. Or I've asked the wrong questions. I need to ask different questions. But sometimes I'm just absolutely blown away by how amazing their work has been and where they've taken it. I go, no, absolutely, let's go your route. I like what you're doing. That's amazing. So the team, I would say, has been a really fantastic challenge and support, and it's great to work here.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, that's really interesting. And I think it can often feel for chief executives that sometimes it can feel like a bit of a lonely place. But I don't ever, we've only had a couple of conversations, Rhonda, but I don't get that sense with you. It seems like there's a real togetherness across the organisation, and obviously externally, and from family as well, and everything else that you're, I guess, juggling in your life.
I think the other thing is to say is like, find your tribe in some way. So we've got a local group of chief execs who meet together once a month to talk about where our challenges are. And that was set up by Rachel Peters from the Volunteer Centre. But there's about 6 or 8 female CEOs. We're female at the moment, but if guys wanted to join in, we'd never be exclusive in that way. And we just work really well together, and we're honest, and we work quite collegiately. So, if one of us has got something that we've used and we've had the benefit of, and we think that somebody else can have the benefit of, then we'll share it. And so I think you can choose to be isolated. You can put yourself in a bit of an ivory tower, or you can choose to find out where your support is and be honest where you're struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think seeking out that peer-to-peer support is vital, is really important. And we've heard it time and time again, actually, on the podcast. It's, there's a real strength, and there's real strength in the network, and a real openness for people to support and journey alongside one another, which is vital.
I really, as much as charities are all on their own journey to try and find their funding, I think that you have to be really careful to make sure that you don't become competitive with each other, that this is a real collaboration. And, we've got 2 or 3 charities that we work with that we improve what we're offering to families because we're working so closely together in some of the services we offer. If we've got little charities around who've got very little staff, then they're welcome to any of our policies or any of that kind of stuff where, the sharing of that information means that they can do more with their users, their families, whatever it is that they're doing. It's just got to make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to ask, because you continue to be a service user of Swing and Smiles, and also the chief executive, how do you strike that balance? Is that an easy line?
It works pretty well, really. I think when we're looking at allocation of support, whether that's Respite, after school club, opportunities to go on the trips, I'm not involved in that in any way. That I just step completely outside of that. And early on, when we were struggling, if we were struggling with staffing numbers, I say, okay, then Katie won't do that. And then there was a point where the team turned around and went, Katie's the one who keeps missing out on everything here, because you keep thinking that you should give your space up. And so we've kind of come to this happy medium, really, that I don't get involved in Katie when she's in here, exactly as the way that other parents don't get involved. If we're here for family play, then I'm not working, I'm playing, So I think we've got quite a nice balance. And
Yeah.
Katie has such a big personality that she's doing it all herself out there. She doesn't
Yeah.
need me to be fighting her corner in any way.
Yes, yeah, but
Yeah.
well, I think there's that beautiful nature of you're learning about the service and experiencing it firsthand,
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's
absolutely.
things that you can take from that you can go,
Yeah,
we can
and
tweak that and learn that.
there are moments when I come back and say, "Oh, do you know that didn't work? I
Yeah,
didn't, it looked great. It was a brilliant idea, but that didn't work." And they go, "Okay, then that's really interesting." And it's things like our communication with families.
yeah,
We'll put a communication out, and obviously I'm not involved in all of that. And then I'll read that as a mum and go, "Oh, that's brilliant." Or, "Oh no, I don't like that. We didn't quite get that right." So yeah, it is interesting. And I think pretty much overall, the balance is there. When I can switch off, I can step away and go,
yeah,
"This is the moment Katie's going climbing, or this is the moment we're doing this." I don't
yeah,
have to worry about being chief exec. Nobody's expecting that from me.
yeah, absolutely. And we've heard, obviously, and rightfully so, heard a lot about Swing and Smiles, which is brilliant. For those that are listening or hearing about the service for the first time today that haven't found you already, as you seek to become more findable, what are ways in which people can either get involved or support or find out more?
Okay, so I think the first thing to say that I haven't said is that we are based in Berkshire. So we're in Thatcham in Berkshire, and that's where our main centre is. We've got another centre in Newbury. We work across Oxfordshire, Berkshire and Hampshire.
Yep.
And we obviously have a website, swingsandsmiles.co.uk, and we have social media. I'm on LinkedIn, all of those regular places. And so I think, if you want to come and use our services, please contact us. You don't need a referral. People can come directly through to us. And as I said to you at the beginning, you don't need a diagnosis. You need to be on the pathway to a diagnosis.
Yeah.
If you're a professional out there thinking that we might be able to support families, get in touch with us, come and have a look. If you want to know anything about us, just get in touch. And we love showing people around our centre. We love talking about the work we do. We're really proud of it, and we can talk a lot about it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we'll make sure that we, obviously, if you're happy, we'll tag the social media channels as well in the show notes, and we'll make sure that there's a link to the website in there as well. So hopefully it's nice and easy for people to get there. Look, I'd love to finish off these podcasts by asking the question: if you could go back and speak to yourself at the very start of your career and give yourself one piece of advice or a tip or some insight, what do you think you'd say to your younger self?
I think I had no idea the journey I would go on. I went in believing I was going to be a nurse for life. And I think we just need to accept that we can end up having this portfolio of careers, and it's brilliant. We're not stuck in a career for the next 45 years. So just have confidence in yourself. If the opportunity comes along, I would go back to myself and just say, just have that a little bit more confidence. As things changed, go with it, knowing that it's going to be all right.
Yes, yeah, perfect. No, that's great. Oh, well, Rhonda, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been great to hear more about Swing and Smiles. It's been lovely to see the journey that they've been on in the last few years, and really excited to see what that continues to look like over the coming years. We quite often say this: we need to get people back on the podcast in a year or two's time to see to see the change and see what's happening. So no, that would be great. Yeah. But again, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been lovely to have you on as a guest.
Thanks so much, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Charity Changemakers Podcast. I hope you've been inspired by the incredible work being done across the charity sector. And this episode is proudly brought to you by my business, Charisma Charity Recruitment. We are passionate about delivering top-tier recruitment services to the charity sector that we care so much about. If your organisation is looking for expert support, then we'd love to help. Please do get in touch today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because it helps us reach more people and showcase the amazing charities that come on the show. And for more episodes, please visit our website, charismarecruitment.co.uk. So until next time, keep change making.